I stood there, wine dripping down my dress, while my boyfriend laughed with his friends like I was the punchline. He thought humiliating me would make him look cool. What he didn't know? His boss was on the other end of my phone, listening to every single word, and what happened next destroyed him. If you've ever been disrespected by someone who thought they'd get away with it, you're going to want to see how this ends. Hit that like button and subscribe, because karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. My name is Sloan, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm 28, I work in corporate consulting, and I've spent the last 2 years building what I thought was the perfect relationship. His name was Rhett. 31 years old, sales executive at one of those high-end tech firms where everyone wears expensive watches and talks about disrupting industries. He was charming when we met, confident in that way that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. I fell hard, maybe too hard. For 2 years, I was the supportive girlfriend. I showed up to his work events even when I was exhausted from my own job. I cooked dinner for him and his friends when they came over to watch games. I listened to him vent about office politics and demanding clients. I had his back through everything, and I genuinely believed he had mine. But looking back now, I can see the cracks I ignored. The way he started getting distant about 6 months ago. The snappy comments when I asked about his day. The nights he'd choose his college buddies over me without a second thought. I told myself it was just stress, that he'd come around. I made excuses for him because I loved him. Then came the invitation that changed everything. Rhett called me one Thursday evening, sounding almost cheerful for the first time in weeks. He wanted me to join him for dinner with his friends at this upscale Italian place downtown. I remember how my heart lifted when he asked. I thought it meant something. I thought maybe he was finally ready to really bring me into his world, to show his closest friends that I mattered to him. God, I was so naive. I spent an hour getting ready that night. I picked out this beautiful dress, deep emerald green, the kind that made me feel confident and put together. I did my hair, my makeup, everything. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted his friends to like me because I knew how much they meant to him. When I walked into that restaurant, I felt good about myself. I felt ready. The moment I sat down at that table, though, something felt off. His friends, Colton, Dax, and Griffin, barely looked at me when Rhett introduced us. They gave me these half-hearted nods and immediately went back to their conversation like I wasn't even there. They were loud, arrogant, the type of guys who think the world revolves around them. I tried to brush it off. I smiled. I waited for a natural opening to join the conversation, but every time I spoke it was like I was invisible. They'd talk over me, cut me off, or just ignore what I said completely. And Rhett? He didn't say a word. He just sat there, laughing along with them, like I was part of the furniture. That's when I felt it. That sinking feeling in my stomach. The first whisper of doubt, the first crack in the foundation of everything I thought we had. I didn't know it yet, but that dinner was about to become the worst night of my life. The dinner started going downhill fast. I tried to stay positive, tried to convince myself it would get better once everyone relaxed a little, but these guys had no intention of making me feel welcome. They were in their own world, throwing around inside jokes and references I couldn't possibly understand, laughing at stories I wasn't part of. I sat there, fork in hand, forcing bites of pasta I couldn't even taste because my stomach was in knots. Then the conversation shifted to business trends, and I saw my opening. This was my field. I knew what I was talking about. I started sharing some insights about market analysis and consumer behavior, things I dealt with every single day at work. I thought maybe, finally, I could contribute something meaningful. But before I could even finish my point, Colton cut me off with this condescending smirk. He made some joke about how cute it was that I tried to keep up with the big boys, and the whole table erupted in laughter, including Rhett. My boyfriend, the man who was supposed to have my back, laughed right along with them like I was the entertainment. I felt my face flush hot. My hands curled into fists under the table, nails digging into my palms, but I forced myself to smile, to swallow the humiliation rising in my throat. I told myself to stay calm, that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe this was just how guys acted when they were together. I made excuses for him even as my heart was screaming that something was very, very wrong. But then it got worse. So much worse. Dax leaned back in his chair, grinning like he'd just remembered the funniest thing in the world, and brought up this story. A story Rhett had apparently told them about me. About a presentation I gave at work that didn't go well, something I'd shared with Rhett in private during a vulnerable moment when I needed support. And now here it was, being used as a punchline at this table. They were laughing so hard, Colton nearly spit out his drink. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. I turned to Rhett, my voice shaking. Why the hell would you tell them that? The words came out louder than I intended, sharp with anger and hurt, but Rhett just rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. He told me to relax, to stop being so sensitive, that it was just a joke. Just a joke. Like my feelings were something to be dismissed. Griffin jumped in then, that smug look on his face, asking Rhett if I always overreacted like this. And Rhett, my boyfriend, the person I trusted more than anyone, agreed with them. He said I was too emotional, that I couldn't take a joke, that I needed to lighten up. Something inside me broke in that moment. I felt tears pricking at my eyes, and I hated myself for it. I didn't want to cry in front of these people. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction. But the betrayal was crushing. This wasn't just some stranger mocking me. This was the man I loved, throwing me under the bus to look cool in front of his friends. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My voice was trembling, but I didn't care anymore. I told Rhett I was leaving, but he grabbed my wrist, told me to sit down, to stop making a scene. His grip was tight, possessive. I yanked my arm away, my heart pounding. "Don't touch me." The words came out like ice. That's when he said it. The words that shattered everything. He looked at his friends, smirked, and said, "This is why I told the guys you're just a placeholder until someone better comes along." The table went dead silent for exactly 2 seconds. Then they all started laughing. Laughing. Like what he just said was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. My hand moved before my brain could catch up. The slap echoed through the entire restaurant, sharp and satisfying against Rhett's cheek. His head snapped to the side, and for a moment everything froze. Then chaos erupted. Griffin jumped up, his chair toppling backward, and in the commotion, red wine splashed across my dress, soaking through the fabric. Whether it was an accident or deliberate, I'll never know. But they laughed even harder, and that sound, that cruel, mocking laughter, is something I'll never forget. I ran. I didn't grab my purse, didn't say another word. I just ran out of that restaurant, tears streaming down my face, my breath coming in ragged gasps. By the time I reached my car in the parking lot, I was shaking so badly I could barely get my keys out. I collapsed into the driver's seat and let it all out. The humiliation, the betrayal, the heartbreak. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen. I sat there replaying every moment, every word, every laugh. The man I loved had just told his friends I was disposable, replaceable, nothing. My phone buzzed, a text from Rhett. My hands were still trembling as I opened it. "You embarrassed me in front of my friends." "We're done," that's all it said. No apology, no acknowledgement of what he'd done. He was blaming me. After everything he put me through, he had the audacity to make himself the victim. That's when something shifted inside me. The tears stopped. The sadness hardened into something else, pure, burning rage. He wasn't getting away with this, not a chance. I sat there in that parking lot, my mind racing, and then I remembered something. Rhett's boss, Brennan Locke. I'd met him once at a company event, and Rhett had spent weeks afterward complaining about how strict the man was. Mr. Locke had a reputation for being ruthless about company ethics and image. He'd fired people for far less than what I knew about Rhett. And that's when it hit me. Rhett had bragged to me, multiple times, about a deal he'd closed a few months ago. He'd used insider information, something he got from a contact at a competing firm. It was shady, borderline illegal, and definitely against his company's ethics policies. He'd laughed about it, proud of himself for gaming the system. My heart started pounding, But this time it wasn't from fear or sadness. It was adrenaline. I drove straight back to my apartment. Rhett still had some of his things there, including his laptop. He'd given me the password months ago and never bothered to change it because he trusted me. Big mistake. I opened it with shaking hands and started digging. It didn't take long. Emails, messages, everything I needed was right there. Proof of the unethical deal, conversations where he joked about bending the rules, evidence that would destroy him professionally. I screenshotted everything and sent it all to my phone. But I didn't want to just send this to his boss anonymously. That would be too easy, too clean. I wanted Rhett to know it was me. I wanted him to feel exactly what I felt, powerless, humiliated, betrayed. So I crafted a plan. I'd get him to confess it all himself on record with a witness he couldn't deny. I picked up my phone and called him. My voice was calm, apologetic even. I told him I wanted closure, that we should meet one more time to talk. He agreed immediately, probably thinking I was going to beg for him back. His arrogance was going to be his downfall, and I was going to make sure of it. We met 2 days later at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. Neutral ground. I got there early, ordered a tea I had no intention of drinking, and waited. When Rhett walked in, he looked exactly like I expected. Cocky. Arms crossed, that infuriating smirk on his face like he'd already won something. He sat down across from me without even pretending to be apologetic. No flowers, no remorse, just that same arrogant energy that made my skin crawl. He thought this was going to be easy. He thought I was broken. I started soft, asked him why he felt the need to humiliate me like that, why he said those things in front of his friends. He barely let me finish before he launched into this tirade about how I embarrassed him by making a scene, how I was too clingy, too emotional, how I should have just laughed along with the jokes. Then he said it, the line that made my blood boil. He told me I was lucky he even dated me in the first place, that girls like me should be grateful for guys like him. He actually said that. Out loud, with a straight face. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. I needed him to keep talking. I needed him comfortable, cocky, convinced he was in control. So I shifted the conversation. I brought up his work, asked how things were going at the firm. His eyes lit up. Of course they did. Rhett loved talking about himself. He started going on about his sales numbers, his client wins, how he was the best performer on his team. Then I casually mentioned that deal he closed a few months back, the one he was so proud of. I said it sounded impressive, asked how he managed to pull it off. And just like I knew he would, he took the bait. He leaned back in his chair, grinning, and started bragging. Told me all about how he got insider information from a contact at a competing firm, how he used it to undercut their proposal and steal the client. He laughed about it, called it playing the system, said that's how you get ahead in business. He didn't see anything wrong with it. He thought he was untouchable. My phone was sitting on the table between us the entire time, screen facing up. I'd positioned it carefully so he could see it, but not close enough for him to grab. And that's when I made my move. I reached over, picked up my phone, and slowly turned it around so he could see the screen. His face went from smug to confused. Then the confusion turned to horror, because right there, clear as day, was an active call, and it had been running for the last 11 minutes. On the other end of that call was Brennan Locke, his boss, the man who could end his career with one phone call. Rhett's face drained of all color. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then Mr. Locke's voice came through the speaker, cold and clipped. "Rhett, we need to talk. My office, tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. The line went dead. For a second, Rhett just sat there, frozen. Then he exploded. He shot up from his chair, knocking it backward, and started shouting. "What the hell did you do? Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you just did?" His voice was shaking, a mix of rage and panic. People in the coffee shop were staring now, but I didn't care. I stood up slowly, calm, and looked him directly in the eyes. "I let your boss hear exactly who you are?" I said, my voice steady and cold. Every single word. He lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back, slipping it into my pocket. He was spiraling now, his hands shaking, his breathing erratic. He started begging, actually begging, asking me to call Mr. Locke back, to explain it was a misunderstanding, that I misheard him. I picked up my bag and stepped past him. "You humiliated me in front of your friends, Rhett." "I just returned the favor. In front of your career." And then I walked out of that coffee shop without looking back, leaving him standing there, destroyed. I didn't hear from Rhett after that. Not a single text, not a call, nothing. Part of me wondered if he'd somehow talk his way out of it, if his charm would save him one more time. But 3 days later, I got a message from someone I hadn't expected. Colton, one of the guys from that horrible dinner. The message was short, almost hesitant. He told me Rhett had been fired, not just let go quietly, but actually terminated for violating the company's ethics policies. Mr. Locke had launched an internal investigation the morning after our coffee shop meeting, and within 48 hours, Rhett was done. His career at that firm, the job he'd bragged about for 2 years, was over. Colton's message didn't stop there. He apologized, said he felt like garbage for how they treated me that night, that he didn't realize how badly Rhett had been talking about me behind my back. Apparently, for months, Rhett had been trashing me to his friends, calling me needy, saying I was holding him back, joking about how he was just killing time until someone better came along. They all thought it was funny. They all played along. But now that Rhett had nothing, no status, no impressive job title, suddenly they wanted nothing to do with him. Colton said the group chat had gone silent. Dax and Griffin stopped responding to Rhett's messages. He'd become invisible to them, just like he made me feel that night. I should have felt triumphant. I should have been celebrating. But honestly, I just felt exhausted. The anger that had fueled me for days started to fade, and what was left was this strange emptiness. I didn't want Rhett back. I didn't miss him, but I mourned the version of him I thought I knew, the person I'd wasted 2 years loving. That person never existed, and accepting that hurt more than I expected. Weeks passed. I threw myself into work, and something surprising happened. I started thriving. Without the constant weight of Rhett's negativity, without bending over backward to support someone who never appreciated it, I had energy again, clarity. I got a promotion I'd been working toward for over a year. My boss told me I seemed more focused, more confident. It was like I'd been living in a fog, and suddenly I could see clearly again. I started going out with friends, taking up hobbies I'd abandoned, remembering who I was before Rhett dimmed my light. Then, one Saturday afternoon, I ran into him. I was at the grocery store, completely lost in thought, trying to decide between 2 types of pasta, when I looked up, and there he was. Rhett standing at the end of the aisle, looking nothing like the confident, arrogant man I used to know. He looked defeated. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and there was this exhaustion in his eyes that I'd never seen before. For a split second, our eyes met, and I saw him hesitate. He started walking toward me, his mouth opening like he was going to say something. I didn't give him the chance. I put the pasta in my cart and walked right past him without breaking stride. He managed to mutter something. I think it was about me overreacting, about things getting out of hand. But I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I just kept walking. As I passed him, I said over my shoulder, calm and clear, "Good luck, Rhett. You're going to need it." I didn't look back to see his reaction. I didn't need to, because for the first time since that awful dinner, I felt completely free. The weight I'd been carrying, the hurt, the betrayal, all of it lifted. He couldn't touch me anymore. He had no power over me. And that feeling, that liberation, was worth more than any apology he could ever give. Looking back now, I realize that night at the restaurant was the best thing that could have happened to me, not because it felt good. It didn't. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life. But it showed me exactly who Rhett was when he thought no one important was watching. He thought humiliating me would make him look strong in front of his friends, that tearing me down would somehow build him up. But real strength isn't about making other people feel small. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less. I didn't ruin Rhett's life. He did that all by himself. I just made sure the right people were listening when he revealed who he really was. Some people call it revenge. I call it consequences. For too long, I made excuses for his behavior, ignored the red flags, convinced myself that love meant tolerating disrespect. But love should never cost you your dignity. And the moment someone shows you they don't value you, believe them. Don't wait around, hoping they'll change.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.